My name is Chris Seymour, and this is my personal reflection from the CT Confectionary simulation. So just to analyse my experience in the simulation, prior to the simulation, I felt nervous about how the CT Confectionary members would respond to questions. I was also well prepared with questions to ask with broad responses collected. I was required to think outside of the box, and follow-up questions were required to gain more information. And I disliked, however, the transparency from the responses of some of the CT Confectionary members. Some of the enablers I experienced during the simulation was group members contributed equally and compiled a broad range of questions that gave us a range of responses. All group members also were well prepared and allowed me to feel comfortable in my speaking during the simulation. A barrier, however, encountered in the simulation was CT Confectionary members didn't have an extensive knowledge of the processes in the company, as well as CT Confectionary members provided repetitive answers during the simulation, which hindered the information gathered. The influence on these recommendations is individually as a group. We asked questions and presented ourselves through a utilitarian lens, which means to act in such a way as to generate the maximum quantum of well-being, happiness, or utility. And this approach for our group was selected to provide recommendations that will benefit the whole CT confectionery business, including stakeholders all the way through to the general employees. So the recommendation as a group we provided includes, so first of all, CT Confectionery has rules in place to prevent child labour, such as needing employees to provide birth certificates and to prove their age, to not allow younger employees also to work during school hours. So we therefore recommended that we support the ongoing partnership between CT Confectionery and Bilby's, however under strict ethical conditions. And some of these conditions will include monthly reviews of policies and procedures, supply chain transparency, age verification systems, which is more stringent checks of the birth certificates that's already in place, as well as training and awareness for employees surrounding the child labour laws. So a bit of a broader cultural context of the simulation experience. So Australia is a country in which I'm privileged to live in and that have strong cultural rules to prevent child labour. So an employee in Australia needs a licence to employ someone under the age of 15, and employing a child without a licence is a crime and may be penalised. So CT confectionery, however, may be in a region in which these rules aren't as strict or enforced, allowing slip-ups such as underage workers integrating into the workplace, and executives that we spoke to throughout the simulation may be none the wiser. And CT confectionery may also have in their region a limited number of applications or applicants each year, and the need for the workforce, so therefore they don't have the privilege of the extended number of applicants that we might see in Australia. Continuing from this, as well as cultural rules, I recognise that cultural biases come into play for businesses, especially in a privileged country such as Australia. So a cultural bias involves a tendency to interpret a word or action according to culturally derived meaning assigned it has to it. So I support that cultural bias is a factor for CT confectionery, and we as a group see child labour as a serious matter that has no place in the workplace. However, CT confectionery employers may be more lenient or not as strict due to their cultural standards or ethical beliefs in their region. And it is important that in these situations that I stay open-minded and empathetic for the CT confectionery members and executives, due to my own cultural biases developed since living in Australia and since we have the strong regulations and rules in place in this country. An example of ethical standards from the simulation experience, we saw that CT confectionery executives and employees have adopted the ethical common good approach. This approach indicates that life in a community is good and actions should contribute to that life. So CT Confectionary executives during the simulation explained to our group that some younger aged workers may not have completed a certain amount of education or have access to birth certificates. And it was explained that they may have to provide help with these matters. So I believe that this is an example of an empathetic and emotional dimension from the CT Confectionary employers, as this is outside of their work duties. However, culturally, they may not have the privileges we have in Australia with education, and this is a leadership decision that they have made to help these younger workers. So personally, I've learned that I'm a highly empathetic individual who is open to listening to different company processes and ethical views. I've also learned that I am much more fluent speaker and I'm able to interact with executives better when I'm prepared. I'm also passionate about strong ethical standards being upheld within a business. And also, lastly, I learned that I enjoy working groups and find confidence in myself when these ideas are grouped together. Due to the simulation, I now have extensive knowledge surrounding ethical decision-making procedures, as well as a self-awareness of cultural rules and biases. For example, in my first career role, I'll be able to articulate and give insights into different ethical procedures and therefore provide recommendation based on these cultural rules and biases. The simulation also helped me become a better group member and made me a more empathetic individual who is open-minded in the business world to how companies make ethical decisions based on cultural views. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and these are my references provided.